Hi, my name is Djinn again, and if you're not tired of hearing me speak for 133 minutes, I am introducing Andy Heng's work, our art director. So let me start with the first segment, which I would like entitle Harry's Memories. One of the issues that came up with this segment was the green wall in the room. Andy was very insistent that it should be green. Well, I had no idea. Apparently, we had a big fight on it, but he obviously won out. The rationale behind it was that it reminded him of Singapore government institutions and clinics back in 1970, and he felt that it would kind of bring a sense of dullness and perhaps a sense of imprisonment to Harry's life. He personally dislikes green with a mild vengeance, he says, but he felt that Harry needed a prison of his own making, disguised as a sanctuary, and that green would do the job to play with Harry's moods. The cabinet plays a big part in the mood and the set of the film. For Andy, it was the embodiment of Harry's psyche, filled with treasures of his past, not of monetary value, but of memories of his glory days, mementos of his numerous travels around the globe, a mark of where he's been and who he was and longs to be. Each single item would bring on a different story and memory, yet they are encased in glass-paneled cabinets, much like himself, bare to the world but not his heart. Framed by tradition, the altar, memory, the display cabinet, and losing time with the clock and the calendar, this wall to Andy was Harry. Even his pride and joy, his son, sits on the top with his old man. I brought Andy to visit my uncle Steve, who was in the Merchant Marine, and he had a cabinet full of mementos, both old and new, and Andy wanted to replicate it, so he went to the thrift shops and flea markets to obtain these items. If he had his way, he said, every single item would tell a story, and they would make a maxi series out of it. The location of Harry's house is in Balestier Road, which is an old school gangster hangout in Singapore, and we thought it was particularly apt. It was up 5 flights of stairs, so the art department had their work cut out for them, particularly as Andy was, the only muscle in the gang of 3. In the end, though, I like to paraphrase what Andy says here. It is his personal most proud setting, as he came as close as he could to his design and moods, which he had set himself forth to achieve within the budget. And he said he came slightly under budget, which was great for my producers. Here we have an old staple of Singapore's yesteryears, the green marble design for mica table with foldable legs, which Andy found for a song, and overcrowded it with liquor and booze bottles, which he said was really hard to find. This was Harry's next most used area after his sofa, where he ate and drank. Basically, Andy likened this area to being his most current parallel to the real world, and hence its clutter of veiled desires and necessities, i.e. booze and cigarettes. The fan in the corner didn't really work, but it helped fill up the space, and it also kept the 70s tone which Andy was trying to achieve in view of reflecting the entrapment that Harry felt within his past. And here we have a shot of the bloodied floor after Harry's drunken para-jump like the night before. One thing about Andy, he was very adamant that there would be no eating, no drinking, or no mucking about on the set, and everybody was kind of afraid of them. In his words, quote unquote, "We are the art department and not janitors or cleaners." But of course, when the shoot started, they were janitors and cleaners as well. On the top right-hand corner, you will see a wooden Australian, I'm told, totem pole with a missing wooden penis, which Andy decided would be great to reflect the emasculation of the Singaporean male. Why, I have no idea how it kind of juxtaposes. And on the left, there's a ridiculous stack of newspaper, which apparently is a very Singaporean trait. The neighborhood Karanguni man, which is the second-hand dealer, would come door to door to collect the papers. Andy decided to tie up the papers because he felt that Harry would make life easy for such a gentleman coming over to collect the newspapers, so he would tie up the second-hand newspapers for him. And here's a shot of one of the 12 ashtrays which Andy had peppered around the house, partially because Harry is such a heavy smoker, but also because on the film set, Andy was also a very heavy smoker. In this shot, we see the television area, and what's interesting, on the left side is the white Christmas tree, which I was very insistent that Andy should find because it reminded me of my past. When I was a kid, we had a British sea captain that lived above us in an apartment, and he always had an out-of-season white Christmas tree, which I thought, and Andy thought as well, would make a really good juxtaposition between the East and the West. It took him a while to find this thing, but one day he said, whilst magic hour was setting, he saw this thing being chucked out by a second-hand dealer in his plastic wrap, and immediately, of course, he bought it, and it was sold on the spot. Here we have Harry's bedroom and his closet, and it is his refuge from the present world. Andy wanted to keep the bedroom as bare minimum as possible and as messy as possible since the day his wife had left him. He wanted a ridiculous amount of clutter and stacked junk, but then he decided that maybe he should cut back a little bit because it would take away from Harry's loneliness. And here we come to the infamous closet scene where Andy had to put up a mirror for Harry Lee to crack his head against and break. The problem being that nobody does breakable mirrors in Singapore, and he frantically called around the globe. And surprisingly enough, it wasn't Hong Kong but the US which had the next nearest breakable mirror that we could access. But we were told that the budget for 3 breakable mirrors was like way over, I think 3 times over the budget of our art department. So what he did instead was he got some safety film, and he laid it over the mirror, and then he squashed himself into the closet itself, which was in itself a feat because he's so big. Then he hit there with a chisel and a hammer, and using a sound cue, he would strike the mirror at its back while Lim Kay Tong would strike it in front. The problem being that the first 3 takes, he didn't strike it hard enough because he was afraid to crack Lim Kay Tong's head. And then on the 4th take, he decided to go for it. He smacked it really hard. When he came out of the closet, all sweaty and losing a few pounds in the process, he realized everybody was staring at him and white-faced. And what it was the chisel had penetrated the mirror by 2.5 inches. And Kay Tong, fortunately, was in character. He pulled himself back. If not, we would have one lead actor with a chisel impaled in his head. I like to add to that the lead actor very gamely went in for a 5th take, and we nailed it, no pun intended. This is the another infamous scene, the Bugis Street scene, because it cost us most of our budget for art direction, but I had left it on the cutting room floor later on, and I don't think Andy's quite ever forgiven me for that. It was quite a challenge, and I think he relished it because it had to replicate 1970s Singapore in a back alley, which is just behind the apartment which we're using for the shoot. And the back alley was transformed by Andy with the help of a lot of rubbish collectors, basically. He managed to cobble together very meticulously a set way back from the 70s of hawker stalls and soda pop fountains and stuff like that, Singapore style. But unfortunately, we had to leave in the cutting room, and that was that. Andy really pulled out all the stops for this scene. He thought he was shooting a music video or something. He decided to wet the concrete floor, which was a bit of an undertaking, being that he only had buckets. And he realized then that the concrete floor, being very porous, that it would take a lot of buckets to wet it down. But he managed to get it done, and I think he was pretty proud of this particular scene. Yeah, again, unfortunately, it's in our deleted scenes, but you can check it out on the DVD specials. This is the velvet curtain scene. We need a velvet red curtain because we couldn't find a location for the whorehouse cum karaoke bar with corridors long enough and mazy enough for us to do the action sequence. So we incorporated 2 locations into one, basically the karaoke lounge which we were shooting in, which didn't specialize in singing, and the Clan Association, which was oddly enough located in the red light district, which was pretty convenient. So what we did was bridge the 2 locations. We put the red velvet curtain up, and when we shot one part of it, we'd take the curtain down and take it to the other location and stick it up on the other side. The picture of the Polaroid, which you see of the corridor, actually leads to the exit. So there's really nothing behind it. The curtain serves as kind of like a gateway to the underworld behind, I guess, in a way. And in our case, it serves as a convenient bridge for 2 locations. The fake blood was, we made it a point, Andy and I, that it had to look as realistic as possible. And he came up with a mixture of colored cordial syrup and various watercolor paints and Ribena, plus some food beverage put in as well for thickness. The problem was he had only a couple of buckets of these things because, he couldn't make that much. And we wanted copious amounts of blood. So having put it on the floor, we realized that we had to put more blood on. He had to frantically go and concoct more blood. Strangely enough, in this scene, as you can see the shot of K Tong on the floor, we suddenly heard like a snoring. Because whilst we were like discussing all this blood issues and stuff like that, the lead actor decided to take a nap. And he fell asleep, and so we thought we should leave him because it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and that would be rather cruel to have to wake him up while we're doing all this blood stuff. Andy had meticulously made this altar look as realistic as possible with fruit offerings, bananas, oranges, whatnot, and he even got the right sort of table to make it look like old, from rubbish dealers and stuff like that. Unfortunately, he made it so realistic that Apache Ong, 1972 Southeast Asia Shaolin Kung Fu champion, thought it was a real altar, and he decided to pray to it. Now, when you pray to an altar, it activates the idol in the altar. So, with our superstitious film crew, that very day when we shot that altar scene was the only day that we were rained out, and the monsoon had came early, and we couldn't complete it, so we had to reshoot the next day. Then we realized what had happened. We all had to make prayers to the altar the very next day, and strangely enough, we managed to get the shoot done on time, and when we finally cut for wrap, the rain came immediately after that, so it was a very strange occurrence.